everyone. My name is Brendan Vaughn. I'm editor-in-chief of Fast Company. I'm excited today to talk to you all about the creative cheat code, how Mailchimp and RWS design better with AI. So to my left, Jeremy Jones, global head of creative at Mailchimp Intuit, and to Jeremy's left, Michael Wayne, head of media and entertainment at RWS. RWS is a localization company, localizes products around the world. So we're gonna really make an effort today to be as specific as possible with the information that these gentlemen are going to convey about the tools that they're using, the tools that maybe aren't being used that should, tools that are being used that maybe shouldn't, everything that we're learning, everything that we're all wrestling with every day as we experiment with new tools, maybe worry a little bit. Are we experimenting enough? Are we experimenting too much? Are we wasting our time? As we all know, and anybody who's engaged with trying to work AI into our workflows and our work lives and our creative initiatives and our productivity initiatives and our goals of profitability and building new products, there is just an overwhelming, it's been referenced a few times on the stage this morning, an overwhelming amount of things you can do. And so what we're going to try to do today is to filter what you could be doing from what you should be doing, and really try to just give you all some very actionable takeaway that you can go home and try tonight. So let's start with a question. We'll start with you, Jeremy. And separating the kind of hype and the headlines from reality, what tools are you seeing that impress you most, that your people are using most in their work?
Yeah, so on the creative team at Mailchimp and Intuit, we use a lot of our AI tools to prototype work, to get to really high fidelity comps and ideas fast, to then we can spend and reinvest our time savings there on the actual making and the craft of things in real life. So it's using a lot of Mid-Journeys, a lot of 11 Labs for audio things. It's using a lot of like copy engines. We're using a lot of Claude these days. It's been easier for us to train on our voice and tone, and it's really just to kind of expedite some of that ideation process is where we've been spending a lot of our time, and then, like I said, reinvesting it on the back end to actually make the physical product.
Great. I have a couple follow-ups to what you just said, but I'm going to hold those for now. Over to you, Michael.
Yeah, I was thinking about this last night, and I have a sort of theory that's coming together. I think if I were to bucket tools into 3 or 4 different groups, I would say on one end, you have maybe the first bucket would be a thinking bucket. So I'm brainstorming, I'm thinking, I'm working some ideas out. Obviously, the LLMs like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini are really good at that. I would say the second bucket I would call maybe the make bucket or the create bucket. So mentioned 11 Labs on the audio side. I mean, there are so many video platforms now that you can create really incredible video with. Obviously, Veo, Kling, there's a new one from TikTok called Seed Dance. I just read about a new one a couple days ago called Happy Horse from Alibaba. I mean, every day there's seemingly a new video platform. I would say the third bucket is maybe the post-creative bucket. So editing tools, like an Opus or a Descript, or maybe an upscaling tool like Topaz Labs that really helps take your content and make it look HD or really crisp. I would say the fourth bucket, and we'll probably get to it, is agents, but we won't even, we'll get there later.
We'll get there. So staying on you for a moment then, Michael, how do you manage the sort of pace of change factor here with your team? Like, how do you balance between encouraging your folks to use these tools and not wanting to kind of waste time, or trying to avoid wasting time on something that's just going to be, I mean, it seems like everything has the potential to be a flash in the pan right now, but to really, do you make that a deliberate part of your process? Do you just kind of say, open season, try whatever, and let me know what you think?
Yeah, I think all of us are testing things all the time, and people are sharing, have you seen this product? Have you seen that product? At RWS, our team is responsible for helping media and entertainment companies, localize their programming, their TV shows, their movies, help them with making their media supply chain more efficient, helping with formatting their content. I mean, we do a whole bunch of things like that, and so there's like a bunch of tools that the average consumer wouldn't use, but like that we're constantly looking at. You know, 11 Labs is a consumer audio company, but there are plenty of other audio companies. We have a platform called, Paper Cup that we use with our clients. There's a company called Dubformer that does audio. But as it relates to our team, yeah, I mean, we need to be spending a lot of time on thinking about creativity and not outsourcing that creativity to the LLMs. Like, it's important we use LLMs and we use tools, but if we're spending all of our time just trying to learn all these tools, we're actually getting a little bit farther and farther away from the most important thing, which is like, what's the creative idea? How can we solve problems using our human intelligence? In our case at RWS, we have something called cultural intelligence, which is like, how can we localize things and have them resonate in different markets? So it's a balance. It's hard. We could spend all of our day looking at new tools, but you know, we also want to strike the right balance.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I think we look at it as like pirates a little bit right now. And we're in this kind of sea of AI. We're just trying everything we can, experimenting, blowing shit up, touching grass, repeat, and just constantly trying to experiment. And I think that's like the most exciting part of, I think, where we're at right now with where AI is. Some days it's a waste of time. Some days it's saving you all this time. And I would just encourage everyone here to just take part in that. This is like a very special time. I think in creativity, we've kind of been here before. I think the pace that you mentioned is unlike we've ever seen before, and just the trying to keep up with the amount that's being launched every day, like you said. Like, and so if you're not kind of that pirate, you'll be left kind of on the island. And so I think right now is like a very good time for you to just kind of immerse yourself as much as you can into these tools.
And pick one and pay $20 a month.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
just
do
all.
it. Just do something.
Pay $20
right?
a month. Just pick Claude. You know, go to Claude, pay $20 a month. Pick ChatGPT, pay $20 a month. Just, and they're all a little bit different. So like, you might want to pick a couple and try them out, in case you haven't dipped your toe.
But maybe check with your company before uploading proprietary data into the pro level tool that you subscribe to outside your enterprise license, whatever. That's another sort of whole thing we could, because like what everybody's actually doing is so far ahead of certain companies' policies and what they've decided is okay or not, which is probably the topic of an entirely different panel. So epic wins. I want to hear very, very specific examples of case studies, capsule case study, quick case study, something that just went phenomenally well, like better than you thought it would go. It could be either your internal, this is for Jeremy, and then we'll ask you the same question, Michael, it can be for your internal processes or creative output, or for a Mailchimp client that you just heard that they did something that just you thought was an incredibly smart use of your features and capabilities.
Yeah, I think for our creative team, we had a campaign recently for our new Mailchimp pop-up forms. The campaign was called "Pop Up Like It's Hot." Pop up like it's hot. We used
Do the whole.
we used a song from a very popular rap artist, not too far from here in Inglewood, and kind of remixed it. Used AI. We licensed the song. Used AI to kind of recreate the song.
How much was the license?
Maybe
You don't have to answer.
I can give you a number afterwards.
Okay.
Not as much as you would think,
right.
just to license the song.
Okay.
But I think what was really great is then we used our pop-up forms as the medium, which are static images of people that we then use Kling AI to kind of have the mouths mimic the lyrics of the song, and we were able to do this within like a 4-week time frame to put out a brand new campaign that was kind of intentionally designed to use AI specifically. So I think it's great when it can be part of the story, part of the idea, and part of the production process, and you're not just kind of cramming it in there because it's kind of the hot thing. So that was a really great example for us where we were able to turn around something quick for a new product launch, and we saw really great results.
Yeah, and that sounds like a really fun project. Dubbing, that's a good segue to you. So there was dubbing involved in that, Michael.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said before, the Media and Entertainment Group at RWS, we focus on taking media and entertainment companies, or let's say enterprises that have large video libraries, and using AI to dub that into multiple languages. And if you think about the media and entertainment space, think of it like a pyramid, right? And at the bottom of the pyramid, you have your YouTube creator or your TikToker or just anyone who's creating content. Though typically those open platforms, the YouTubes, the TikToks, the creator economy, adopt new technologies very, very quickly. They just will try things, they'll throw things against the wall. As you move up the content pyramid, maybe it's a smaller production company, maybe it's a studio, maybe it's a cable network. It gets a little bit harder for these companies to really test things out, whether it's a legal thing, it's a political thing, whatever it is, all the way up to the top of the pyramid, where you might have your Disney blockbuster summer movie, right? And Disney is probably one of the companies that's really going to stay very far away from integrating AI into their blockbuster movies. And when they do, and you guys maybe remember a couple years ago, there was a movie that integrated AI, The Brutalist. They used AI to train Adrian Brody's voice, and they got tons of blowback. And it's kind of silly because movie studios have been using AI with their special effects. Basically, special effects is a version of AI that they've been using for years. But anyway, there's a lot going on with AI. We recently had the opportunity to work with one of the largest streaming platforms in the world to do a proof of concept around 3 different types of content. One was live content, one was unscripted content, and one was scripted content. And it was remarkable. Some of the things that we worked on didn't really compete with human dubbing. But in one category, in the unscripted category, we essentially, using AI, were able to achieve similar quality to human dubbing. And it was amazing to see that AI has gotten to the place and is moving up this content pyramid where it's really starting to perform almost as well as humans. So and that just happened last month.
And let's stay with you on my next question, which is the opposite of this, epic fails. I know there have to be some bloopers from the translation world, the dubbing world, or whatever other example you want to provide.
Well, I would say, again, I don't want to call out any companies that we work with, but I think there's a lot of companies that want to use AI and they think it's kind of like a magic bullet. Like, oh, we're going to save all this money and we don't need humans and it's going to be efficient.
Expectation versus reality gap.
Yeah,
for sure.
And so what we'll find is we'll work with clients who have this expectation that they need it at a fraction, pennies and no humans. And usually that doesn't turn out well. Usually you get quality that doesn't really meet any sort of expectation. And so, RWS, we really have invested a lot in this concept of cultural intelligence, and you need humans to apply that, right? AI doesn't always know when a joke is going to be translated well, or there's some history reference in one culture versus another. And so we are constantly working with clients to say, yes, let's integrate AI, let's test, but we have to have this cultural intelligence layer, and we have to have humans in the loop. And sometimes it's a lot of humans in the loop as you move up the pyramid. Sometimes it's less humans in the loop. But unless you're a YouTuber who really doesn't care about quality at all and are just just want to use some synthetic voices without any humans, you're gonna need really smart, expert people who understand how to localize things.
So we're going to get into where the human role and kind of where that remains crucially important in different ways toward the end of the conversation. But first, Jeremy, give me an example of when it didn't pop, when it popped like it was cold, or I don't know if that didn't really work, but you know what I mean, where it just was the opposite of the success of the previous.
Yeah, we had another campaign called the Clustomer, which was really trying to...
The Clustomer,
okay. Which was really trying to bring to life what happens when you don't personalize your email marketing at scale. You create this giant amorphous blob of customers all stuck together. So we had that visual and that word in our head, and we used AI to kind of prototype that blob of folks. And we assumed well, man, maybe we should just really lean into it to make it a part of the campaign. But the more and more we played with it, the creepier and creepier it got, to where, extra fingers, heads, toes. Yep. It didn't really understand what we were trying to do. And so it got us to a point, and then we ended up doing it practically based on kind of the initial rendering that we had. We built a giant cage that housed 25 different actors. We hired contortionists. We hired people that were really comfortable being in really weird, situations, and then practically brought it to life. And I think that was an example where, like AI will get you so far. Hollywood and the crafts people will help you kind of take it over the top. And so we learned kind of, where it stops and where kind of the humans step in to take it to the finish line.
And so that raises another question, which is like, how do you evaluate a failure? Like in terms of, is this a situation where we should never ever do this again? We should like just discard the very idea of doing this with AI. It's never going to work, and we learn that, and lesson learned, great. Versus like, this is actually pretty good conceptually, but the tech just isn't there yet, and sort of the whole continuum like in between those.
Yeah,
two.
I mean, you have to like reassess it every 3 months, basically. It's changing and updating.
But it's like, but how do you work that? Because it's easy to sit up here on a panel and say you got to reassess it every 3 months, but day to day, we go to work, we're busy, we're doing our thing, we've got our deadlines, this is a huge new thing that we have to incorporate into it. And yes, there's a lot of time saving potential, but there's also a lot of time wasting potential. And sort of for leaders, for managers, knowing how to evaluate sunk costs versus a down payment on something that could really pay off in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think we look at it as, especially our role, it's easier than ever to just create a bunch of content. But I think where it really comes to life is understanding, like, out of the 100 things it creates, like, which 99 don't need to live.
Yeah.
And so I think it's understanding that even though we can create more things than ever, like, should we? Because it does take time, like you're saying, and there are sunk costs there. And I think it's you have to let your leadership know, because I think everyone, the expectation versus reality gap, that there's just a magic button that you're hitting, and like it's cranking out these perfectly designed and written things that are ready for to see like the limelight, and it's just not the case yet. And so I think it's, you have to set aside time and invest in it, but I think you also have to be able to show like how much time it actually takes to do these things, because there's the expectation versus reality thing is very real, and I don't know that leadership is always like aware of that. And I know like our team feels the pressure, but you really have to just chronicleize it and jot it down and prove it out.
Yeah, it's like there was that phase where the CEO could go to the board and say, we're doing cool shit with AI, and they would say, all right, great, onward. That's long gone. Right now it's like, what are we doing that is productizing things, that is changing the revenue picture, et cetera. But Michael.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're in the middle of this incredible AI revolution. There's no question about that. Things are changing very, very quickly. And so that creates a lot of anxiety. CEO down. But I think we have to, especially on the creative side, we have to be able to manage expectations. We have to learn with partners, and we have to find partners who are willing to take risks and be okay with that. And it's hard when there's so much expectation and there's so much pressure and there's so much uncertainty. But that's the key to good partnerships. That's the key to working with good clients. It's clients that are willing to go, we're all learning. You guys have an expertise. We have an expertise. How do we learn together? How do we work? But our business, we're a business to business company. We're not a business to consumer company. So a lot of it is managing expectations with our clients, where the tools are, where the quality level is, what can we expect, and not make it a one-off thing. I mean, that's the worst thing, is like you go in, you don't manage expectations, you promise things, and then all of a sudden everything is just a cluster. And then you're going to be in business with these folks for hopefully the next 10, 20 years. So it's tuning out a lot of the noise and getting down to the pragmatic side of things is what's worked for us.
Yeah. Well, and so Jeremy, especially let's start with you on this next question, since you manage the internal creative services unit of the company. Let's talk about workflows and just get kind of nerdy and granular on like things that you're seeing that have been especially effective, maybe that you feel are, a little secret of Mailchimp, or something that you just feel like it's kind of underutilized generally in the workforce right now that you're finding really effective in terms of getting AI into the workflows.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing right now for us is just training, these systems. You're creating agents or just training the algorithms on your brand voice and tone, because it gives so many folks a head start. We're only able to help so many people within the office every single day, and so for the marketing team to be able to take kind of our ethos of what's in our heads to help inform a brief or to get a head start on kind of a project or something has been kind of game changing for us, especially with like the brief writing too. So we've kind of created our own internal kind of AI brief writer,
Okay.
To kind of help marketers like expedite and know like the things that we're looking for, the things that are valuable for the creative team that we're going to respond to. So no more kind of 50-page decks. Like
Yep.
It's a brief, it should be 1 page.
Yep.
So we kind of stick to that. We give it rules, but it's really able to help them kind of articulate what they're trying to say. So we get kind of better creative out of it.
Yeah, AI, for all of its like a tendency to like suck up to the user and just be sort of obsequious, it is way better than we are about just blabbing on endlessly and just distilling things down. So, Michael, how is RWS managing this? What are some good examples from your company?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone at our company are using LLMs in all sorts of different ways. I can give you 3 examples just personally how I use them, but I think this is indicative of how probably other people are using them. So our group at RWS is only about 6 months old. Papercup, which I mentioned before, is an AI dubbing platform that RWS acquired. So that's been around for a while. But I wanted to reposition RWS or position RWS in the media and entertainment space. It had not been in the media and entertainment space. And we wanted to kind of reposition AI dubbing at the company. And I could have easily outsourced that to any AI tool and just said, come up with 20 different campaigns that I could, but I didn't. I was like, you know what? Like, how is this going to connect with me? Like, what is going to make me excited about this? And a lot of my passion is around storytelling. Before I joined RWS, I ran a studio, and I love this idea of stories traveling. And that every story, even a little story we might tell, might travel a little bit further. And stories travel all over the world, some to billions of people, some to just a couple friends. And then I worked with an LLM and said, I'm very passionate about storytelling, and I like this idea of stories traveling. And I'm really a big fan of Chiat Day's ad campaigns of the 80s and 90s. Can you just give me a couple little ideas around that? So the creativity didn't come from the LLM. It came from deep within me, what I'm passionate about and what I want this group to go out and do. But it just then helped give me a couple little prompts to come up with this line that we help stories travel further. And this idea that every story has sort of a journey that it takes. So that's one example of where I didn't outsource it, but it just helped. It helped me kind of crystallize some imagery, crystallize some thinking. Another one was I just hosted a webinar, and I needed data. And there was this 100-page deck that the webinar company had put together around AI dubbing in the marketplace. And did I want to go through 100 pages? No, I did not. So I put it in an LLM, and I said, can you please just create one slide that summarizes everything in this 100-page PDF, and with this, this, and this. And God bless, it did exactly what I asked it to do. It's awesome. It took data and did something great. The last thing, and then I'll kind of kick it back to you guys, is I'm really interested in creating agents. So I don't know if anyone has used platforms like Replete or Lovable or any of the big LLMs have agent builders. So I created an agent that would remind my team to update Salesforce every week. Just make sure you update Salesforce, because I don't want to send a note. Please update Salesforce before our meeting. I have not.
Jim Horan, you need to be doing that.
I have not deployed this agent, but we can talk if anyone's interested in maybe using it. But yeah, just an example, and we can get into agents, but there's a whole other layer of complexity when it comes to agents around security and privacy and all sorts of things. So that's probably another panel.
Yeah, agents are a great segue into my last couple questions, which ironically are about the human part of this equation. And so we were talking backstage, and I reminded these guys about a story. Some of you might have heard about it recently, where an agent submitted some code to a kind of open source volunteer organization. I don't remember what this organization did, but there was a human in charge of vetting the code. This human rejected the agent's submission, not because the agents wrote bad code, but because they have a policy of like, we only have so much time, we're only gonna vet code that's submitted by a human being. This agent got its feelings hurt that its code was rejected, ordered itself to draft a blog criticizing this poor guy who was just doing his job, blasted that out on the internet, and this guy forever now has to deal with this agent-written, you said no to me, so you're a mean person, and I'm gonna flame you online. So this is the kind of human agent story that is dystopian. We'll talk about some much more positive ones. In RWS, you're in the sound of a human voice, incredibly meaningful emotionally to people.
Yep.
It carries a lot, and so you mentioned earlier about wanting to keep people involved in that and client management as far as what their expectations are. How else do you think of what you're asking your people to do now with the aid of AI? Are you able to find things for them to spend more time on that they couldn't do before? Are there new roles? Agent whispering, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you. There are so many examples of this. So RWS has a network of linguists. We call them cultural experts, all over the world. Over 50,000 of them. We actually now have gotten into the training of LLM business because we have this huge network where we're actually helping LLMs train their models. So that's a really interesting little evolution of our business. But yeah, I mean, look. We were joking before about how like most stories come out of something painful or something traumatic, right? And I still believe deeply that that's where stories originate from. They come from something deeply personal, something usually traumatic. Whether it's a comedy or a drama, usually it stems from something painful. And we were joking about movies like 40-Year-Old Virgin and Elf and things like that on the comedy side. But using AI and using humans to help stories travel further and working with big media and entertainment companies to help them travel further, that's kind of where my mind is. It's a symbiosis of the two. And my instinct is it will be that way forever. I'm long on humans. I don't think the machines are taking over yet. And really finding the right balance between the two is key to our business, and I think key to every business, really.
Yeah. Jeremy.
Yeah, I mean, especially as a creative, the risk of AI taking your job, and that's like something that's on everyone's mind. But I think if you're kind of an early adopter and you just look at it as like another tool to put in our tool belt, it's just gonna help kind of raise the level. I think our jobs are now more important than ever. If you think about like the bar of mediocrity has just been like raised and quintupled in the amount of content that's going to be created out there, that now you as a creative get to kind of help rise above it more than ever. So I think, our jobs are actually more vital than ever before to kind of, raise the quality of story out there. If you look at just your social feed, like you can feel when something's not made or touched by a human and it's AI generated. And, I'd ask the question of like, well, as a consumer, like, well, what do you think of me? Like,
right.
How little do you value me if you're just creating all this kind of slop to put out there versus something that had a fingerprint on it?
Yeah, 100%. I agree 100%. I think it's harder now than ever because we've just spent the last 25 years building the digital revolution and the explosion of imagery every day. We're consuming thousands and thousands of images across multiple platforms every day, and now here comes AI to even increase the number of like images that we're bombarded with. So finding stories first that are human and inward is going to help you break through. There's no question about that in my mind.
Yeah. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Lots of specific tools were cited today, lots of specific examples of clients that, projects that you guys did either for internal purposes or external that were successful. I got a lot out of hearing you talk about how to differentiate between something that was just a misfire and we learned that we're not going to continue versus something that really is just pretty close. It's just either a matter of time or trying again. So really, really helpful. Jeremy, Michael, thank you both very much. Thank you, Canva, for having us. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Thank you.